Welcome to Smokey Uncuffed. I'm Brian. We'll talk about law enforcement, social media platforms, basically just the ones that I use, and life, so I can talk about what I want. So today what I'm going to try to do is dispel 2, maybe 3 myths about law enforcement. There's several things you always hear people, they got to meet their quota. And first and foremost, quotas are illegal in the United States. So, your department can't say, hey, go out and get 10 tickets every day. Well, you can't do that. I'm not going to say all departments don't do that. I'm not going to say there's not some that are out there doing stuff like that. But they can't give you a number. They can't tell you need 5 speeding tickets and 3 seatbelt tickets every day. You just can't. It's against the law. Because what that runs into, if they're setting you a number and you're getting close to the end of the shift and you need 1 more speeding ticket, well, that guy's doing 4 over. You're going to write him a ticket for it. It's just getting you away from the frivolous stuff, getting you away from the tickets that don't need to be written. So that's one big myth that gets harped on a lot. Now, something departments can do on that note is they can say, you need to pick your feet up. You're not doing much out there. You're not getting much activity. And if they just say activity, it's not a big deal as long as they don't put a number on it. Activity includes warnings. And with like the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, you had written warnings and written citations. We don't do verbal warnings. Well, at least you weren't supposed to. And so if a larger department like the Highway Patrol decided to set a quota secretly, it'd be quickly discovered. You'd take people to court and the attorneys would go back, open records, and look and see how many citations everybody's been writing. And whenever there's 60% of the troopers writing 10 a day, and then you got a few above that and a few below that, well, when the majority of them are at 10 a day, well, that's one kind of point. Hey, they're all going for the same number here. So the biggest reason you don't want to do that is, like I said, the frivolous ticket. Whenever you get near the end of the shift and you're thinking, oh man, I'm 1 short. So the whole time I was on, they never gave us a number. They'd tell you occasionally to pick up your feet if you were dragging in one area or the other. And because there were some areas they like to see a lot more enforcement than others. DUIs. They want to see you get out there and get your DUIs. You can't make people drunk. So try to get out there and find the ones that are. Seatbelts. Boy, seatbelts were pushed hard for several years when it first became law in Oklahoma, and people hated it. And what we always laughed at is they were so worried about this one fine. It's $20 in Oklahoma to get caught not wearing a seatbelt. And it doesn't put points on your record. So basically it's a $20, I don't even know what to call it, just a $20 dock, because it doesn't do anything to your driving record. It won't make your insurance go up. So if you really don't want to wear your seatbelt and you got a little bit of money, pay $20. And honestly, even if somebody tried to install a quota in their department, the only things you could really do it on would be stuff like, speeding tickets, improper turns, basic traffic laws, no seatbelts, maybe no seatbelts, because once an area gets aware that you're working seatbelts hard, everybody wears them. But so basically it'd just be simple stuff like that, because you couldn't really put a quota on stuff like drug arrest, DUIs, because sometimes those things are scarce and few and far between. And we've actually seen somewhat of a decline over the years in DUIs and drug arrest. And a big part of that's going to be because of they legalized marijuana. I've done that, my thoughts on that once on YouTube, and I'll do it again one day, but that's for a later one. So I'm going to roll right out of that little myth to another one that's commonly, it's just constantly brought up. Oh, you're profiling. If people really understood how hard it is to profile, at least in our job. Now I can see you're doing it if you're in a low speed limit area, 20, 30, 40 miles an hour. I could see it there, maybe. Because here's the biggest problem, at least where we're at. Our tent laws are not enforced very hard. I mean, nobody enforces them too much, and so the tint's a little darker than what it's actually supposed to be. So whenever you're barreling down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, which I say 70 with quotes around it because we all know they're doing faster than that on the interstate. Well, when you're doing 70, 80 miles an hour, and I'm trying to determine what your car looks like, make sure I've got the right car on the radar, and pick it out of the crowd, seldom do you ever look directly at the driver. Okay, so now say you don't have tinted windows and I can see the driver. Well, that's about the only instance that I can just get a quick glance, look back down, and get ready to take off. And on top of that, not only am I looking at all this stuff, I'm also looking at the traffic that's behind you, and I've got to find a hole to jump out of the median and get out there and get after you. There's way too much going on for you to actually sit there and go, oh yeah, I want that one right there because of race or whatever. But I mean, it's almost ludicrous whenever people start pointing that one out when you're on like an interstate system. Like I said, I can see it in a low speed limit area because you'd have time. I mean, they have to mope along and you get time to really stare them down. But on something like an interstate, I won't say impossible because I'm sure there's some people out there talented enough to do it, but not this guy. I just got you by how fast you were doing, and that was it, or whatever driving behavior you were exhibiting. And that was all that I went off of. I guess some of my favorite ones on that little note is when somebody's accusing you of profiling and it's like 10 o'clock at night. So even if your windows aren't tinted, I can't see in your windows. It's dark. So I can't see who you are. Male, female, horse, cow, whatever. I can't see what's driving the car. I just know that car's driving too fast and I've got to go get it. So that's one that I always found comical when people would accuse me of that. And so now whenever you look at like, say, small towns or places that have low speed limits, there I would say it's possible to do such. And maybe it's just where I live and I'm fortunate. Most of the little towns around here, I know all the police officers, and there is nobody worried about who you are as long as you're following the speed limit or if you're not breaking any laws. If you're acting a fool, it doesn't matter to us who you are. So out of that one, I'll roll right into this other one. All law enforcement, all cops, all troopers, they all love getting in pursuits and chasing these people all over heck and half of Georgia and chasing them down and catching the bad guy. I'm telling you, no. Completely untrue. I'll say when I first got on, probably the first 2, maybe 3 pursuits, it was exciting. But after that, after you've done 2 or 3 and you understand how dangerous it is, A, for you and them and the motoring public, and B, the amount of paperwork you're about to fill out. If you got them within the first 2 or 3 hours of your shift, you're doing paperwork the rest of your shift over a pursuit, that's very possibly over nothing. And you'll see them on TV and on the news, on cops, and they always look so exciting and everybody acts so pumped up. I can tell you right now, they are exciting, but it's not what any one of us is looking for just because of the possibility of them getting into an accident, them blowing into a small town and still being at highway speeds, which we've done, and those are never any fun. So on that, many small towns have a no pursuit policy. There's many agencies that have no pursuit policies. If they run, get their tag number, get a description, we'll catch them another time. Simply because of the safety factor. Now then, if it comes back and you run the tag and it's a stolen vehicle and this is a murder suspect you're looking for, there's always exceptions to the rule. If that's somebody you're looking for out of something like that, sure, you'd probably chase them. But if it's just Joe Blow citizen going down the road and you don't know why they're running, maybe they don't have insurance or no driver's license, well, it's not worth risking everybody's life over something that in the end is going to be a ticket and maybe a little jail time. Never worth it. So on that note, even the highway patrol has gotten to where if they leave it to the trooper now, that if you decide that it's being too dangerous, this guy's just way too wild and we need to back off, you have the right to call the pursuit as long as it's not like I said, a serious felony, something that's murder, something like that we know what the guy's wanted for. Because, and here's another reason is Oklahoma Highway Patrol has trained, some people call it the pit maneuver, we call it TVI, which is Tactical Vehicle Intervention, where we go up and we nudge the back of a car, spin them out into the bar ditch, and take them into custody. So one of the big reasons is that we have that power. In fact, down where I'm at now, I know that if a small town gets in pursuit, yells at you, and I'll give you a perfect example. There was one not long ago because I was talking to somebody and it was coming out of a small town, and they were saying, "Hey, we're coming out of town, and when we get 3 or 4 miles out of town, we want y'all to take it over." Well, it's got to be a real good reason why you're chasing him for us to take over your pursuit, because what they're really hoping for is we'll go out there and TVI them, spin them out into the bar ditch, damage our car and their car, and possibly tear a fence or whatever else is around, and all that liability is on us. And so now that we've done that, we've got to take them into custody. Now their problem is ours. So unless it's just a major situation, something like I discussed before, like I described before, they don't even take them over for people anymore, simply because of it's learned that other agencies are just putting the liability on us to end this thing and hopefully do so safety. If not, it's y'all's problem anyway. I mean, that's the way they're looking at it. Okay, so I'll give you a couple stories. The troop I'm in, we cover 7 counties, and my first 2 or 3 years on, I led the troop in activity. I mean, I was a hard charger straight out of academy. Boy, I was ready to go crack heads and stop all the bad guys, take all the bad guys to jail. So because I was high activity, me and another trooper in this detachment, or in my detachment, we both got the pursuit cars, which at the time we called them pony cars. They were the Camaros. It was like I had a 2002 Camaro with a LS1 in it, which is a Corvette engine. So these things would scream. Nothing to the car, tons of engine. So I'm out one night, and another trooper I was out with was on the interstate. I was out in the county playing around those county roads, and he gets into a pursuit with 2 cafe racer motorcycles. The ones you got to lay over on. And so he's chasing down the interstate. He gets one of them, stops, and he's on the radio yelling, "Hey, where are the pony cars? Let's go. Let's get out here and get after them." And so here I come, and I go flying onto the interstate, and he has one stopped, and so I go flying ahead, and I catch up to this guy. And we're running over 100 miles an hour. And just to put this, kind of box this in for you here, this was like at 11 o'clock at night, middle of the week. So traffic at the time wasn't real thick. This was, been almost 20 years ago, so it's been 18 years ago. So at the time, the traffic wasn't real thick. And so I was able to really fly, catch up to this guy. And I'm going to let you do some thought on that. So this guy's doing about 120. So what was I doing to catch him from behind? Just think about that. So I catch up. You can't TVI motorcycles. I mean, that's just almost a sudden death for the rider. So that's not anything you're even trained to do. They don't even try to train you to do it. You just chase them until they wreck or stop. That's the unfortunate side of it. So this guy's cruising down the road, and he turns and looks over his shoulder, and he sees me behind him. Well, I know I can't do anything. So I just wave at him. Well, now the race is on. This guy takes off, and fortunately he was just on a 600cc bike, so they usually top out about 155, 160. And so he jumps way out ahead of me. Here I go, I take off. And since I don't work for him anymore, I can say it. At one point I looked down and I was doing 172 miles an hour chasing this guy. And so we covered an unbelievable amount of ground fast. We take an off-ramp, and I see him. We're at over 100 miles an hour, and I see him clip a Suburban. I know he did. And the Suburban stops. The motorcycle keeps going. And I know he hit it. And so I keep after the bike. And so we go for about 2 miles. And this guy finally stops the bike right in the middle of the road, stands up, lays the bike over between his legs, holds his hands up, and his left hand is split in half where he caught I guess that'd be the clutch. Is that the clutch or the brake? I think that's the clutch. And it caught in between his middle finger and his ring finger and just split it about 8 to 10 inches down the middle of his arm. So everybody comes running up there, ready to apprehend the bad guy. And when they see that, everybody's like, oh my gosh. So I'm talking to this kid, and I said, why are you running? Well, they don't ever chase me in the town I'm from. Well, what town do you think I'm from? I don't know. What towns can I work in? Well, I don't know. All of them. We're state troopers. We have state jurisdiction. And so I asked him why, other than that, would he run? Well, I just thought I could get away. 18 years old, now has a felony on his record, lost 80% mobility in that hand. I mean, really, is that worth it? And so on that, is it worth it point, after the fact, I'm talking to the guys the next day, maybe later that night, and I start reflecting back. How dumb. That's one I should have, but I was young, but I should have said, nope, this is getting too crazy, I'm going to let him go. And yeah, I had his tag, so we could have tracked him down later. But when you're in it, you're wanting to go get him. So, but I reflect back, those cars were fiberglass. What if I would have hit an armadillo at 160, 170 miles an hour? Excuse me. Those cars, like I said, were fiberglass, and if you hit one, an armadillo, probably even a rabbit at that speed, it would have busted up the fiberglass, may have messed up the front end. It would have jacked that car up bad. So I can assure you that's the last time I ever drove that fast, simply because as I got older, I realized how dangerous that really was. So it was probably, a year later maybe, might have been 2. I was working around a small town, again out in my county, and one of the police officers in town gets in pursuit, and they started yelling for help, and there was only one officer out, and they had some reserve officers down at another part. We have a natural water park called Turner Falls, and you ought to look it up if you get a chance. Just Google it. It's a natural water park, beautiful place. So he's the only officer in town, and he gets to chasing this guy, and they head out west of town on a divided 4-lane, which in about 3 miles you're going to be to I-35, and this guy's going the wrong way. So he yells at me and says, hey, this guy's going down the wrong side of the road, and what do I need to do? I said, you stay on your side of the road, let him be in the crash, you stay out of the crash. So he did. He's kind of paralleling the guy, and so I got into town, caught up with the pursuit, and I just blow their doors off. And I just opened up, flew by him, and the guy was only doing about, 45, 50 miles an hour maybe. It wasn't like a high-speed thing. So I get a couple miles down the road. I cut the median. I blocked the outside lane. And my theory was I'm going to block the outside lane of my car, and I'm going to jump out and grab my stop sticks. And stop sticks are spike strips, whichever you like to call them. You run over them. They put a little tube inside the tire after the spike pulls out, and just the air comes out. It's a quick deflate, and they're done. They're not going anywhere. Or if they move, it's not going to be at a very high speed. So I did that. I got turned sideways. I look up, and the headlights are bearing down on me. And I thought, this guy's sped up. And he had sped up, probably 20 miles an hour. And so instead of jumping out of the car, because out of the car is not where you want to be when a bad guy's coming at you in another car. So I stay in the car. I've got my hand on the gear shift, and I'm standing on the brake. And he goes to the left of me in the bar ditch, and I thought, he's going to go around me. He gets about, 30 yards from me and turns straight into me, hits me head on, takes the whole front left corner off my car. He goes skidding to a stop, and so now I'm sitting here pinned in my car because I can't get my doors open because it's jammed them up. And so I'm sitting here kicking on the doors, and I finally get him kicked over, run over, ready to snatch this dude out of this car. And I've got a flashlight in my hand, which you can't hit with flashlights. So, I mean, I just, heat of the matter, I'm running up to the big old flashlight, D-cell flashlight in my hand, and I get up there, and the guy's just shaking. I mean, he's just shaking from head to toe, sweating, and you can see where he's face planted in the windshield, and the steering wheel is bent into a pretzel. And so I stepped back and just kind of looked at him. I said, we need to get EMS up here. He's messed up. So EMS gets on the roll. My people show up for me. They take me to the hospital in a patrol car, and they take him to the hospital. And one of the deputies that showed up out there hit me up right before we left the scene, and he goes, hey, look what was under the passenger seat. It was a loaded .357 Magnum. I'm so worked up and mad because this guy has hit me head on in this car that's 2 years old, and I'm worked up about that. Not thinking, hey, he may have a gun. I charged the car. I mean, brilliant. How it's law enforcement 101 stuff there, man. You know you don't do that, but when you're irritated, you know, your emotions get the best of you and you're wanting to get this guy, you charge it. So come to find out, the guy, they got him out, they transported him. He stayed in the hospital overnight and he died overnight. And it was a big mixture. They never could really pinpoint it. Part of it was from the collision, obviously, because, I mean, he took a real hard lick. It sure didn't help him. But he was also high on meth. Excuse me. I've got kind of a cold here. That's why my voice is all jacked up. And he was high on meth. And his temperature was through the roof. So it was a mixture of the two things. Some blunt force trauma from an accident. And some methamphetamines that had him up to like 106, 107 degree temp, which your brain boils around there somewhere. So in the end, he died. And I've always been asked why that bothered me. And it has not, and I've always slept well, and I can tell you why. Right after it happened, I jumped out, and I was stopping traffic that was coming the correct direction on my side of the road. And the first vehicle I stopped was two of my best friends. It was a husband and wife, and their two kids. At the time, one was probably 3, and the other one was about 6. They would have been the first ones to meet him had I not been there to stop him. So, no, I've never felt bad about it because he hit them head on. There would have been some injuries in theirs. I mean, those little ones in the back, it was just fortunate the way it worked out. I mean, it's unfortunate the guy died. But, you know, he brought that on himself. He did it. I was at a complete stop when he hit me. So, it wasn't like I was going after him. And that's just two of them. I mean, over 20 years, I can't even tell you how many of them I was involved with. Some of them short, some of them really long. But what I know in the end is, as you get older doing this job, and you've done it for several years, you get in pursuit and somebody starts running. It lasts about 2 minutes before you start going, all right, dude, just pull over. Just pull over and stop and give up. This is ridiculous. And that's all you're thinking in your head. Just stop this mess. And especially after I did that, you know, I got hit head on, and that was an eye-opener that, you know, these guys right here are actually trying to kill you. They're not just trying to get away for giggles. I mean, that guy, I feel his intent was to truly either injure me bad or kill me because he could have gone around me. He was on the outside. I wasn't making a move, and he turned right into me and hit me head on for no apparent reason. So that's another myth of everybody thinks. You know, those are three of the big myths, but that's a big myth that everybody thinks that we're all looking for pursuits and we're going to get out there in the high-speed chase. Oh, not at all. I mean, we know how dangerous it is. We see what high-speed accidents do, and we certainly don't want to be in them, A, and we don't want to work them, B. I mean, because the outcome's never good. Somebody may just get hurt, but they're going to be hurt nonetheless when they didn't have to be. So, like I said, that's kind of three of the myths I covered there. Quotas, you know, it's a joke. We can't do it. Like I said before, I'm not going to say there's nowhere that's doing it. I just know big agencies like what I work for, you don't. They don't. Because we get audited. That stuff would come to light because of the number of troopers we have. I mean, there's like 800 and something right now, I think. So, in the state. So, I mean, you figure if they're doing that, somewhere a lawyer's going to see that and average it out and say, well, there's something up here. So I did the quotas. Okay, so then the profiling, like I explained that. Man, that is so much harder to do than what people would think. And unless you're in a small town with a low speed, and even those guys aren't worried about that stuff. And maybe I'm just fortunate where I live that nobody around here is worried about that stuff because never been around it, never been involved in it. So I'm sure it happened somewhere. I'm not ever going to rule it out. So then the third big one was pursuits there. And you heard those stories. I mean, they're not fun. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, we're supposed to be big, bad, tough troopers. It's scary. It scares the crap out of you because you're thinking about you're passing cars and almost double their speed. Anything can happen at any second. What if they have a blowout? What if you have a blowout? I mean, that's where you're sitting. So, anyway, guys, let's go ahead. So that went a little better than I thought. I figured that I would really drag that one out because I knew the pursuit one would take a while because I had some stories saved up for you. And, but then again, these are all my view of it, my outtake. And like I've told you before, I'm going to get some other officers in here and interview them. And I'll bring up a lot of these subjects I've already talked about and get their take on it. They may look at it totally differently. So as you on my podcast already know, I am recording this. This will also be on my YouTube channel, which is named the same, Smokey Uncuffed. And if you're interested in seeing the other YouTube channels I'm associated with, my big channel is actually Smokey CNC Woodworks, where I do CNC woodworking and woodworking in my shop. I'm also associated with another channel called Next Level Revelation. That's with my pastor. It's with Craig Limley. He was a founding member of the Power Team. If y'all hadn't heard of them, look them up, see what those guys do. So guys, that's going to be all for this one. If y'all hadn't done so yet, please subscribe to me on YouTube and my podcast. And for those of you listening and those you watching, I'll see y'all, hear y'all next time.